Hi guys, it's AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit. Tonight things are going to be just a little bit different. I had to take a personal commitment, a previous obligated commitment tonight, and I asked Jerry to fill in at last minute. So I'm looking forward, as I hope you are too, to what he's going to bring to your ears tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night, but just a heads up, thanks for being here.
What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. She's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Hi guys, it's AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight for a special broadcast done by Jerry Hicks, the Darkwolf's Den Show. I had to ask Jerry to fill in for me tonight, so I hope you give him a warm, receptive welcome to a Thursday night.
Don't you wish that your weekend was longer than just 2 days? Well, if so, then you're in luck, because here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio, our weekend begins on Wednesday. Yes, you heard that right. Our weekend kicks off every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, with Darkwolf's Den, starring yours truly, Jerry the Dark Wolf. But that's where the fun has only just begun. Make sure you come back every Thursday through Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, for the Rippin' Rabbit Hole Live Show, starring AJ the Rippin' Rabbit. He dives into the archives of vocal legend Art Bell and brings those stories up to date. So make sure that you spend your extended weekends with the Animals Radio, Jerry the Dark Wolf, and AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, every Wednesday through Sunday, right here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
Rippin' Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Rippin' Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson with Reality Shifters and the International Mandela Effect Conference, and you're now listening to Darkwolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
Is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light, and you're now listening to Darkwolf's Den.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. Don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret mountain cave, hidden deep within the Idaho wilderness, this is the Darkwolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to another episode of the Darkwolf's Den Show. Whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, the edge of your seat, or anywhere in between, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is Thursday, September 17th, 2020, and tonight we're going to talk about Flight of the Ancients. We all know that Kitty Hawk and the Wright brothers happened in 1903, but there's quite a few case files in history that have flying machines long before 1903, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But first, today in history. On this day in 1683, Dutch scientist Antony van Leeuwenhoek is the first to report the existence of bacteria, which opened up an entire world of microscopic life to the awareness of scientists. Interestingly enough, just 2 days ago, the scientists just released information that suggests that bacteria may actually be living in the atmosphere of Venus. And ladies and gentlemen, that is today's Today in History. And I love when the Today in History kind of lines up with the topic that we're covering. Like tonight's topic, ancient flight. Or Flight of the Ancients, I should say. So, in 1903, like we said a moment ago, the Wright brothers made the first known air flight in Kitty Hawk. And that was the first time humans had ever took to the sky. But before then, way before then, we've had many cases of different flying machines being seen in the air by our ancestors. And one of the earliest cases comes from the ancient Indian Sanskrit text.
Vimana is the word for flying machines or aircrafts in the Sanskrit language, as well as in many of the present-day Indian languages. There has been a mention of a variety of Vimanas in the Indian literature.
And that is one thing that is very interesting across the ancient Sanskrit epics, is it's like each Vimana had its own style for the user. Almost like we have cars today that we have our own styles in and our own different ways we decorate them and things like that. Well, the Vimanas were pretty well the same way. They were a lot the same, but they were just as well different for the independent user that was using them at any given time.
Pushpaka Vimana of Ravana, in which Rama returned to Ayodhya from Lanka after his victory over Ravana, was just one among the many Vimana. While there are many stories in the Purana and in the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata that speak about Vimana, there are separate technical literature available, such as Vaimanika Shastra by Maharshi Bharadwaj, which discuss the Vimana from a technical perspective.
So it's like a blueprint or a user's manual for the Vimana then?
In such technical texts, the avionics of these Vimana are discussed in great detail, describing the design of a few aircrafts, the fuel, mechanisms, and maneuvers of the same.
So, with such detailed information in these epics, I highly doubt that they just made it all up. That's a lot of information to just make up by ancients nonetheless, writing these Sanskrit epics.
Along with these, it also lists out the various Vimana in the different yuga. These are,
for those who don't know, yugas are separations of time into different categories, if you will. And there's different ages, just like the horoscope ages, the age of Aquarius and so on. There's different ages of the Yuga, and we're supposedly in what's called the Kali Yuga. But what makes this interesting is each Yuga had its own style of Vimana. That shows an evolution of machinery, a change in machinery over time, which is something we are familiar with here on Earth. Of course, we've got the iPhone 1, and we're up to the iPhone 10X7, 5G, 4, whatever. Goodness knows the way they name these things. But we have increased. We've got the PS1 up to now the PS5. We've seen all of our technology increase through time. Just like these Vimanas or flying machines also tended to change or evolve through time.
here we see that Pushpaka Vimana is listed under Treta Yuga, the Yuga when Rama and Ravana lived, based on various references to the time period in the text.
Well, that's also very interesting that not only is their story set within a certain time frame, of course, these gods that walked the earth at this time, but also the stories framed within this time frame match the technology that was also claimed to be within this time frame. Nothing is off, if you will. Like everything lines up just perfectly as it should, which again is a lot of work for these ancients if they're just making it all up, which I highly doubt that they are, but that is just my opinion.
Pushpaka Vimana originally belonged to Kubera, the stepbrother of Ravana. It was taken away by Ravana from Kubera and used by him to kidnap Sita. Later, after the victorious battle where Rama defeated Ravana, Rama and Sita flew back to Ayodhya from Lanka in the Pushpaka Vimana loaned to them by Vibhishana, who was crowned the king of Lanka after Ravana's death at the hands of Rama.
And again, these ancient Sanskrit texts are pretty well the accepted history of the India culture. And I find it very interesting because, like it also says, it mentions in it multiple texts, not just the Mahabharata, but the Ramayana and I believe another one that does mention it, but I could be wrong.
Hanuman's Vimana Vajranga also finds a mention in this list of the Vimana of Treta Yuga. It is indeed amazing to note that the names and characteristics of the Vimana across various stories in the different Puranic texts tally well with each other, as also with the time period and capabilities of the Vimana as mentioned in the technical text.
Once again, all the different details and information across all these different Sanskrit texts all agree with each other. Either there was somebody really making sure all this information met together and agreed with each other, and let's be honest guys, it's really, really hard to pull off a scam like that, especially with your ancient, historical texts. But we won't get into that. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But the point here is, it's really, if it were pulling off a scam, there would be a lot of inconsistencies. Yet we find across these different technical manuals and different books and different information in the Sanskrit text that there really is no inconsistency at all.
As an interesting side point, it will be worthy of note that Rama, who is considered as a divine avatara, God, could not fly on his own. He needed a mechanical flying machine, in this case the Pushpaka Vimana.
That's another very intriguing point that she brings up there, because as a god you would think they would have the ability of flight anyway, or did what the ancients called gods have the ability of flight thanks to machines? One of the earliest ideas of aviation that I was able to find was recorded in, yet again, the Babylonian set of laws. Remember, the Babylonians are the Sumerians, which is in modern day Iraq. So the Sumerians we talk about a lot on this show, as you guys know. And in a set of laws named the Hakath, this reportedly includes a passage which reads, "To operate a flying machine is a great privilege. Knowledge of flying is most ancient, a gift of the gods of old for saving lives." But thinking about the Vimanas before we go forward again, the ancient epic Sanskrit Vimanics, it mentions that it lists technical information and basically gives you a whole blueprint of how to build these things. So has anyone ever tried to recreate one? Actually, you may be surprised by this answer.
Hey guys, we all know ancient flying machines called Vimanas mentioned in sacred Indian texts, but in this video I'll show you documented history where a Vimana actually flew and the British government had to intervene and suppress this technology.
If there's one thing that I like better than a good case file, is a good case file that has evidence that is documented in public form, like in some type of police report or judge, court report, things like that. That's the kind of evidence I live for, and it sounds like that's the kind of evidence we're gonna get.
In 1895, 8 years before the Wright brothers flew their first plane, a man called Shivkar Bapuji Talpade flew an unmanned airplane in front of thousands of people in India.
Now, to be clear, that did say he flew an unmanned airplane.
But the really intriguing detail is that he did not depend on modern physics or aviation techniques, but he created this flying machine entirely based on ancient Indian texts. Shivkar was born in 1864 in Mumbai and was regarded as a prodigy. He earned a PhD before the age of 30. When he was 15, he had a meeting with an elderly man called Subbaraya Shastri, who had been researching Vimanas all his life. He is the same man who later wrote Vimanika Shastra, a book about flying machines. They both worked together for 15 years and built a Vimana that could not only fly, but could also be controlled with some kind of a remote control device.
And once again, let us remember this is 1902. This is a year before Kitty Hawk actually occurred. And not even that, but just the fact that they built this out of just descriptions out of the ancient Sanskrit text. This is something they just used the ancient text, the ancient Mahabharata and the Ramayana and the different ancient Sanskrit books in order to build this machine.
So, did the Vimana fly? The very first flight was tested in Mumbai beach in front of thousands of people, and this unmanned Vimana reached an altitude of 1,500 feet and sustained its flight for about 37 seconds before it crashed. Now, compare this with the first flight of Wright brothers in the US. Their first flight only reached an altitude of 120 feet and lasted 12 seconds before it crashed. While the Wright brothers were funded with $25,000 after their first flight, Shivkar and Shastri were denounced as con artists who created worthless machines. Remember, this is the time of British occupation of India, and racism was widespread.
And it really is truly sad that something like racism gets in the way of the truth and historic document and really just letting this information get out and be known. Because I'm sure most of you have never ever heard of this before. And we mentioned earlier that the ancient Sanskrit texts are almost like a technical guide on how to build these Vimanas. And I found now a audio bite where it's describing just how deeply they go in these texts when it comes to the technical details in which are listed about these Vimana in the ancient Sanskrit text. And remember, these were written between the end of the 500s and the early 400s BCE.
What we know about ancient Indian planes or flying vehicles comes from ancient Indian sources, written texts that have come down to us through the centuries. Undoubtedly, most of these texts are authentic. Many are the well-known ancient Indian epics themselves, and there are literally hundreds of them. Most of them have not even been translated into English from the ancient Sanskrit. Vimans in Sanskrit literature. At least 20 passages in the Rig Veda refers exclusively to the flying vehicles of the Ashwins.
And the Rig Veda is yet another book of ancient Sanskrit texts.
This flying machine is represented as three-story, triangular and three-wheel. It can carry at least 3 passengers. According to tradition, the machine was made of gold, silver and iron and had 2 wings.
So far, this is a pretty detailed, descriptive list of items on the way these things are made.
With this flying machine, the Ashwin saved King Bijju, who was in danger at sea. Vaimanika Shastra means the science of aeronautics.
The science of aeronautics, Vaimanika Shastra.
To understand aeronautics, we need to understand aerodynamics, propulsion devices, materials, and metallurgy. In Vaimanika Shastra, there is much about propulsion devices and aerodynamics. The focus of the book is on Vimans mentioned in many ancient epics, such as Rigveda, Mahabharata, Ramayana, and others. According to Vaimanika Shastra, these Vimans were not sophisticated flights from previous authors, but real and aerodynamically viable flying machines. The ancient Indians not only knew how to fly, but also flew in high sophisticated machines with many capacities. Using mercury vortex motors, these Vimans can remain motionless in the air and become invisible. When used in war, they can leave enemy forces unconscious and spy on enemy ships.
So that right there is a very important piece of information that he hit on. We're gonna dig into that real quick for just a moment. And that is the mercury vortex engines. As insane as that might sound on the surface, and again, remember, this was written in BCE, what we're about to hear now is really, really interesting based on that information.
An ancient Indian text was discovered in a temple in 1875, which is believed to have been written 2,500 years ago and may have been based on even older writings. The texts described how mercury was used as a fuel for various devices, and the knowledge contained within the text is thought to have contributed to the German technological revolution of the early 20th century.
And we all do know that German engineering was very, very well accomplished. And during the World War, we also know that the Germans were looking into every single possibility that they could get their hands on.
Some sources say that the ancient text became the primary source of inspiration for all German military technology, and that the scientists who studied it were astounded by the accuracy and specification of the records.
Which, once again, we have mentioned that the ancient Sanskrit text had very, very detailed information within them about how to build and work these Vimana craft.
Going further, some even say that the pages contain designs and proposals for ancient aircraft, but that the scientists and engineers of the time simply weren't capable of taking the designs from the page and turning them into reality.
And if that sounds far-fetched to you, remember we discussed in one episode, a very, very early episode here, that the pyramids cannot be rebuilt even with today's technology. So, I mean, you could rebuild them using steel and cement, but the way they were built then, using today's technology, you cannot do the same. And that is not even out of that the ballpark of reality when you figure that here again you have that same concept where you've got something that the ancients are describing and creating, yet it cannot be replicated in a modern day and age.
The idea might not be as absurd as it sounds, though. We know that mercury has been used to create flying vehicles in the past at least once, and far earlier than anyone would imagine.
And this next case file is something that I completely forgot about, and I'm so glad that I found again.
The earliest example was in 1751, when a scientifically minded monk named Andrea Grimaldi flew over the English Channel and landed in Dover, taking just over an hour and 7 minutes. The device is said to have resembled a giant bird, and confirmation that the journey occurred exists in the form of letters, which are stored in both London and Italy.
Once again, I absolutely love case files when I have documented evidence on file somewhere, like in England.
A study of the apparatus was performed in French Lyon and was signed by 3 academics. Many years later, in 1895, an unmanned mercury-based flying vehicle was demonstrated by Dr. Del Padre, who was the professor of the School of Art in Bombay,
which we spoke about earlier in, apparently it was 1895, so it was about 8 years before the Kitty Hawk actually occurred, but still, it was just the same earlier than the first, quote, manned flight of humans, end quote, in 1903. And you may be surprised to learn that actually there has been some work in modern times into this idea of the mercury vortex engine.
How many of you know that mercury could hold the secret of anti-gravity?
And I'm going to repeat again, I've repeated this multiple times, and I said it last year, I said 5 years, so within 4 years, it is my prediction. The Wolf said it here, you heard it here first, exclusively on the Darkwolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio. Within the next 4 years, anti-gravity will be released as a thing to the public. They will suddenly figure out the magic qualities of anti-gravity. It'll be such a great breakthrough just in time for it to be needed for the Space Force. I just see this as a way to release technologies that they've hidden from us for quite a while. That is just a speculation, but once again, if it does happen, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first.
Mercury interacts in a unique way with magnetic fields, which makes it possible to build mercury engines capable of powering themselves.
Wait, I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time? It makes mercury engines that are able to do what?
Mercury interacts in a unique way with magnetic fields, which makes it possible to build mercury engines capable of powering themselves.
That's what I thought you said. Are we talking something like a perpetual motion machine, getting out more energy than you're putting in? That breaks certain laws of physics, which really excites me a lot.
Exposure to mercury is enough to start an engine spinning. It's thought that much top-secret research has been done on the possibilities of mercury engines, but that research is heavily classified.
And once again, just to reiterate what I said a moment ago, I do believe within the next 4 years from now, the mercury engines and the anti-gravity engines will be a unclassified. As a matter of fact, it will be a commonplace thing here in the next 10 years, in my opinion, but I think it will be released in the next 4 years.
That doesn't mean all of it has been hidden away, though. During the 1990s, physicist Mikhailovich Polyakov openly conducted anti-gravity experiments with mercury. Polyakov designed something he referred to in his notes.
Okay, now thinking about everything we've learned so far this evening, what do you think he referred to the type of engine in his notes as?
As a vortex inertial motor.
Or maybe a mercury vortex engine?
In essence, his motor created vertical traction against the force of gravity by accelerating channels of mercury vapor in an enclosed space. Using this method, he demonstrated that he could create a limited anti-gravity field, capable of lifting several kilograms of weight into the air. His work should have been an introduction to an era of anti-gravity engineering, but sadly seems to have gone no further.
At least not in the public's eye, and we can all take a guess as to why we think it maybe didn't go any further in the public's eye. And what's also really, really interesting about these Vimanas is that the list of things included things that you could eat before going on one of these ships, as well as certain clothing that you could or could not wear while aboard one of these vehicles, which is really interesting because it makes me wonder if there are certain interactions or certain fields around these ships, maybe high magnetic fields, that would have interactions with jewelry or different pieces of clothing or any kind of things like that, and or maybe even time manipulation or some type of time field. Or there's so many different speculative ideas that there could be. But speaking of time, ladies and gentlemen, wow, look at the time. I cannot believe the first half of the Darkwolf's Den Show is already over. Guys, we'll be back with the second half of Ancient Flying Machines on this Thursday, September 17th, 2020, as we kick off the weekend right 2 nights in a row with Darkwolf's Den Show exclusively right here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio. So we'll be right back after these messages, ladies and gentlemen. Don't you touch that dial. Oh, yeah.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Sex in the City? Nope. Interview with a vampire? Nope. If you build it, they will come? Febreze? Tweeze in the middle? Wrong again. Depends. Nope. Welcome to the Twilight Zone, my friends. A phenomenon known as the Mandela effect. You may have heard of it. You may want to not neglect. Unbecoming, awake, and spiritually inclined. So sit back, relax, while I blow your mind. Take the thumb off the cell, stop following the sheep. Down the rabbit hole we go. Are you ready for that leap? The Zapruder film, #JFK. I looked at the footage and I said, what the heck? How come there are 6 people in that dang car? Stretch limo, for me, this was all too bizarre. A glass behind the driver, no way, Jose. I remember before in the car, my mind was in total disarray. Trying to make sense of what I was seeing, what I was witnessing. Didn't connect with my inner being. A second woman in the car for me was only the first lady. Do you smell what the rock is cooking? All this seemed kinda shady. Berenstein Bears. Nope. Shazam? Sinbad? Not in this reality. Good lord. An awakening. Was it all a revelation? The naysayers and skeptics call it confabulation. They say you misremembered and call us bat crazy. Did you smoke a doob? Maybe that's why it's a little bit hazy. Unless you experience it, you'll never know. But enough of that. On with this Mandela effect flow. Mandela effect in the house. What did the world happen to Ed McMahon? In this reality, Publishers Clearinghouse was not a fan. Never the spokesperson, but we remember it clear as day. McMahon holding that check while the winner yelled out, yay! American Family Publishers, never heard of them until now. This Mandela effect has me raising the people's eyebrow. So many theories on what it could be. Have you ever heard of CERN and the LHC? Luke, I am your father. Nope. Sally Fields? Wrong again. That stands for the Large Hadron Collider. I thought I would mention. You know, the machine that opens up portals into different dimensions? You're probably thinking that this is all science fiction, but you gotta think outside the box and have no restrictions. Alternate realities and parallel dimensions. Okay, I get some of your apprehensions. Could this all be a spiritual evolution? Cause the human race has grown tired of this toxic pollution. Mandela effect in the house. Crazy. Some people, they just don't understand. That's just the way it is. You know? Stay strong, my friends. That's just the way it is. Dolly has no braces? Are you serious? Good lord. Joel Osteen. Oh wait, Joel Osteen. So what the heck happened to the owl? Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. Are you enjoying a Thursday night with Jerry Hicks and the Darkwolf's Den Show? I wish I could be. Unfortunately, I had to take the night off tonight. I had a previous commitment. Nevertheless, my top hat's off to Jerry Hicks for taking on a Thursday night. We'll return back to Flight of the Ancients in just a moment. If you're enjoying the show so far and you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. We're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, bringing you the very best of Common Sense Radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. I'll be back again tomorrow night, Friday, with a look at forgetfulness. That's tomorrow night, Friday, September 18th, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Are you forgetful? If so, why? Tune in tomorrow night and find out. The rabbit hole goes deep on that one. Then Saturday, I'll be looking at psychosis. That's Saturday, September 19th. At 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Come along with me on a journey through psychosis. Should be a lot of fun. Then Sunday night, we'll end out the weekend together with Holographic Universe. Is it possible that the universe is holographic? That's Sunday, September 20th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. All shows start at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to join the mail list by visiting rippinrabbithole.com. Sign up for your email address, and we'll send you out the weekend schedule every Wednesday morning. Now, this week is the 1 week that we did not do that. We didn't send out a weekend schedule, and we apologize. The entire shift in the schedule just added extra chaos. But make no mistake about it, your schedule will return to your email box next Wednesday morning. So if you haven't done that, please make sure to join that mail list. Speaking of returning, we're going to return back to a Thursday night Jerry Hicks Darkwolf's Den Show. Put a 1 in the chat room if you like Jerry on a Thursday night. I'm curious. Maybe I need more nights off. Either way, give yourselves that round of applause for being smart enough to be here. And we thank each and every one of you and your loyalty for tuning in to these incredible live broadcasts. We return back now to a Thursday night with Jerry Hicks and the Darkwolf's Den Show right here on the very best of Common Sense Radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the Darkwolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the Darkwolf's Den Show. Whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, the edge of your seat, or anywhere in between, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. If you're just tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are talking about ancient flying machines. Flights of the ancients. What was going on before Kitty Hawk? Were there things in the sky that could not be explained? And in the first half, we went through the ancient Sanskrit text and explained Vimanas very, very deeply, and how those were seen and cited being flown by the gods of the ancient Indian Sanskrit text. But the ancient Indian Sanskrit texts are the only ancient texts that actually talk about flying machines. As we know, the Bible is absolutely chock full of paranormal instances, and flying machines are right along that list of paranormal ideas and things that occur in the Bible that cannot be explained by modern science. And the Ezekiel's wheel, as we know, is one of those examples.
In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, the word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar, and the hand of the Lord was there upon him. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river of Chebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God.
And I find it intriguing that they call it visions, but perhaps it was what he was actually seeing happen in the sky. Because let us remember, in the Bible, all of the messengers came from the sky. All of them. Every last one of the angels, every time the messengers came down from God, they came from the sky for some reason.
And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof as the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire.
And remember that whirlwind of fire that comes out of the sky, because that will come back up again here in a little bit. And this verse goes on to explain the different look and likenesses of the creatures that come out of this whirlwind, but we're going to skip ahead just a little bit.
And I looked, and behold, 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel beside one cherub, and another wheel beside another cherub. And the appearance of the wheels was as the look of a chrysolite stone. And they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel.
The wheel within the wheel. And I remember this verse a little differently. To me, this is a little bit Mandela affected, because I remember the wheel within the wheel coming out of the sky and the creatures coming out of that, not the wheel within the wheel being beside the creatures, which is how it is now in the verse. But that is way off topic for what we're discussing tonight. What we're discussing tonight is the actual ancient flying machines themselves that show up in the Bible, and that's not the only time. That's just one example, because remember, just one example really doesn't prove a lot. But that's not the only time that we find this occurring in the Bible.
When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal.
And once again, there's that whirlwind that God is going to use to take Elijah up with.
As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the 2 of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out,
My father! My father! The chariots and horsemen of Israel!
And Elisha saw him no more.
And yet here again we have chariots of fire that have come out of the sky in a whirlwind nonetheless, and embraced and taken this prophet into heaven, and he just disappeared. Now, I don't know about you, but chariots of gold or chariots flying of fire coming out of the sky, that doesn't exactly sound like a commonplace event to me. That sounds like ancient flying technology. And there's one more case file that we're going to cover before we close out this show this evening, and that is the Aurora, Texas case file. This is one of my favorite UFO case files because it occurred before the modern day UFO flap and UFO speak, and there wasn't a lot of study and there was no ufology at the time that this happened. This actually occurred at a time when, you know, UFOs and flying machines just should not have been being seen within the sky whatsoever.
On April the 17th, 1897, an incredible event would occur in a small farm within Aurora, Texas.
Once again, this was 1897.
According to the locals, an alien craft came streaking down towards their farmhouse before dramatically crashing through a windmill and into a nearby field. The incident, now known as the Aurora UFO incident, was strangely similar to the Roswell crash. The people who lived on this extremely remote farm would actually discover alien corpses within the alien wreckage.
So before Roswell, there was another alien that crash landed on the Earth. Now this is interesting.
On the 19th of April, 1897, Dallas Morning News, written by Aurora resident S.E. Hayden, alleged that the UFO is said to have hit a windmill on the property of a Judge J.S. Proctor.
Now that is even more intriguing. Not only did it take out a windmill and actually cause some kind of damage there on the property, but it was on the property of a judge nonetheless, a high authority figure in the community, if you will.
2 days earlier, at around 6 a.m., resulting in its crash. The pilot, who was reported to have been not of this world and Martian-looking, according to a reported Army officer from nearby Fort Worth.
And once again, this is 1897. This is before the policy of shut up or else that our government now tends to hold.
Did not survive the crash, subsequently buried with Christian rites at the nearby Aurora Cemetery. And the cemetery does indeed contain a Texas Historical Commission marker mentioning the incident.
So there is physical evidence apparently in the ground of this alien body, right?
Reportedly, wreckage from the crash site was dumped into a nearby well, while some ended up with the alien in the grave.
Now, I don't know if that was the best way to dispose of the metal materials. However,
adding to the mystery was the story of Mr. Brawley Oates, who purchased Judge Proctor's property around 1935. Oates cleaned out the debris from the well in order to use it as a water source, but later developed an extremely severe case of arthritis. He later claimed that he was convinced it to have been a result of the contaminated alien water.
And to say this is a severe case of arthritis is a severe understatement. The pictures that you can find of this man's hand are knots on top of knots on top of knots on top of knots. It is absolutely insane and the most worst documented case, I believe, of arthritis ever to be known. But that is my opinion. That is not a medical fact.
However, not only is there clearly extremely compelling details here, some of which clearly need to be investigated further, there is also the site of an alien grave.
Well, in modern times, has anybody looked into this alien grave?
On December 2, 2005, UFO Files undertook an investigation related to the incident, titled Texas's Roswell. Their episode featured a 1973 investigation led by Bill Case, an aviation writer for the Dallas Times-Herald and the Texas State Director of Mutual UFO Network, MUFON.
A case file that still today can be read over on MUFON.
MUFON investigated the Aurora Cemetery. They discovered a rather peculiar stone that was, in fact, a headstone, which depicts an alien craft. This stone signifies the resting place of what most of the town are convinced was an alien being.
Now, remember, they buried the alien and the metal together in the crash site, so there should still be some evidence there, right?
The team received very strange readings from metal detectors when exploring the grave. MUFON asked for permission to exhume the site, but the Cemetery Association declined permission.
And at first you think, well, okay, that's understandable. You know, it is a cemetery and they might not want people just digging up random graves or, digging in spots that are already buried. I totally understand the privacy issues and all the issues here, but, there's something funny that happened after that.
After the MUFON investigation, the marker mysteriously disappeared from the cemetery, and a 3-inch pipe was placed into the ground.
So, number one, they have all, whoever they are, have all but destroyed this marker showing where the grave would have been.
MUFON's metal detectors no longer picked up the strange metal readings from the grave. Thus, it is now largely presumed that the artifacts, along with remains, have been secretly removed from the grave.
And once again, anybody who is surprised by that hasn't watched this or listened to this show very long at all.
MUFON's report eventually stated that the evidence was inconclusive, but did not rule out the possibility of that strange event actually occurring on the night of 1897. Although the Cemetery Association still do not permit exhumation, ground-penetrating radar has been used on the grave. However, the condition has badly deteriorated, and the radar was not able to conclusively prove what's still there.
If there really is anything left there at all. And it makes you wonder, you hear that the ATIP or the government program may actually have pieces of metal or pieces of UFOs that were downed, or somehow they got their hands on these potential materials and are trying to reverse engineer them. If this is true, perhaps some of these materials are what came out of this 1897 grave site. And that brings us on into modern times and the 1903 Kitty Hawk flight. And then we have 1945 and Nagasaki and Hiroshima being bombed with nuclear weapons. And after that, in 1947, we had the Roswell incident. And it is very, very likely that the two are connected. They may have actually started being downed by the military after they started coming around to find out why there was such a big explosion here on Earth. But, it's interesting that these ancient Sanskrit texts speak about their gods having flying ancient machines and sending flying ancient machines, and these ancient historical stories, and especially even the Aurora UFO crash, in times when there should not have been anything flying around the skies. Could that be why at Kitty Hawk a lot of people seemed semi-disinterested in what they were watching? If you watch film from Kitty Hawk, yes, there is actually film from Kitty Hawk, believe it or not. If you watch film from Kitty Hawk, you can actually see people kind of semi-wandering around and not really as interested in such a historical moment as you would think they would be at the time. And perhaps it's because seeing things flying around to them wasn't exactly such an oddity. Or maybe it's just because they were bored and they really were disinterested. Maybe all of this is taking things just a bit too far and interpreting ancient text in a way that shouldn't have been interpreted. Or maybe the ancients had technology, like the pyramids for instance, that we cannot recreate today. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this very special Thursday episode of the DarkWolf's Den Show, where we discuss the ancient flying machines. I hope everybody enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed doing it for you guys. Guys, this weekend has been kicked off with a double dose of the DarkWolf's Den Show. And that's going to be it for me this week, but the weekend fun has only just begun, guys. Come back Friday through Sunday. I almost said Thursday. Come back Friday through Sunday for the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show, starring our buddy AJ the Rippin' Rabbit. That's right. He's going to talk about, I forget, what was it, Friday? Friday. I think Friday he's going to talk about forgetfulness. That's it. He's going to talk about forgetfulness. Is it something that is we can actually help and take care of ourselves, or is it something that naturally occurs? Can we choose not to be as forgetful, or is there something about it that can't be stopped? And then on Saturday, he's going to follow it up talking about psychosis. How can we spot psychosis? And is it as common as you think it is, or maybe it's more common than you think it would be? Then Sunday, he's going to push on through to close out the weekend with the holographic universe. This apparently is a user-requested, viewer-submitted request, and I cannot wait to hear his take on the holographic universe. Guys, I'm going to go over to my favorite hangout. It's the rippinrabbithole.com and the 24/7 Backstage Lounge over there at RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. That's right, click the VIP Backstage 24/7 Lounge and go about halfway down the page. Click the VIP section and it will be asking you to allow your camera and microphone. Go ahead and hit the OK button on that. And once you get inside, you can turn off both the camera and the microphone and join us in the text chat if you would like. We have some people that come back there all the time and do just that. Also, if you would like to send us a shout out like you heard from Propagate This Light and Cynthia Sue Larson at the beginning of the show, it's easy to do. Just go down to the bottom of every page on the rippinrabbithole.com and click that big red button. That's right. You're going to record 30 seconds of audio and send it to us here in the studio, and we're going to get it on the air for UEO. Okay, maybe UEO isn't a word, but we're going to get it on the air for you, just like you heard, like I said, at the beginning of this show. Guys, we've got so much fun stuff over there, as well as the show topics. If you want to drop us a line and suggest us a topic to do over here, we love challenge topics from our audience. It's easy to do while you're on the rippinrabbithole.com. Go on over to the Rabbit Holes, which is our show topics group. There's a lot of fun topics over there, from Lucid Dreaming by our buddy Juanito 1975, that does the Mandela Effect rap as we go out to break each time. Or we've got the DarkWolf's Den Show groups and topics, show suggestions over there. Drop us a line and we will get those episodes on for you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and on behalf of Walt House, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, Chick, Michael Musco, and everybody involved with this show, as well as everybody at Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network, we thank you for listening, and remember, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay awake, but dare to dream. Yeah, it's the weekend, baby.
Yeah, that's right. You spent another Thursday night here in the Rabbit Hole. Give yourselves a round of applause for being smart enough to be here. If you enjoyed tonight's special broadcast by Jerry Hicks, the Darkwolf's Den Show, please make sure, if you haven't done so already, to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. I'll be back again next Thursday night. Folks, I gotta say, I had a previous obligation that I couldn't shake tonight, and I wish so much that I could be here with you, but my top hat's off to Jerry for holding down the fort and bringing the very best of Common Sense Radio to you, as we do every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. Tomorrow night, no exception. I will be back tomorrow, Friday, September 18th, with a special look into the world of forgetfulness. Do you remember or do you forget? Which one is it? Tune in tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, and find out. Again, that's Friday, September 18th. Then Saturday, September 19th, come along with me as I dive through the rabbit hole of psychosis. What exactly is a psychosis? What happens to people that are suffering from a psychosis? More important, how are they formed? Tune in Saturday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, and find out. Then Sunday night, we end the weekend right with a look at the holographic universe. Is the universe made up of digital pixels? Sunday night will end out the weekend right, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Tune in and find out. My top hat's off to all of you for being here. Thank you to you, Sir Jerry, Darkwolf's Den, for covering in my absence. I do apologize. I wish so much I could have spent tonight with you, but nevertheless, I think you were in good hands. Put a 1 in the chat room if you agree. This was definitely common sense radio at its finest. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to hop on over to the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. Enter the VIP chat lounge. I'm sure you'll find Jerry as well as many other Rippin' Rabbits there, and I may be able to pop in there a little bit later this evening. Nevertheless, the VIP chat lounge over at rippinrabbithole.com is where it's at, because for many of you, the conversation ends here, but for the Rippin' Rabbits, it's just beginning. Actually, it's just continuing, where the conversation continues live in the backstage VIP chat lounge at rippinrabbithole.com. So, until we meet again, good morning, good evening, or good day, whatever the case may be. I'm AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit. Take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.
Unlocked and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever is queen, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. Is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? Just illusion, manifestation, or a dark delusion?